Greetings fellow Netrunners, I'm here again for a video, and this time it's about horizontal decks. Now, I'm sure for those of you who have been playing on Jinteki.net, you've been seeing lots of ways in which corps are protecting their assets. You have hostile infrastructure, you have IG, you have Garin, lots and lots of different ways. But one of the best ways to protect this is with enhanced login protocol. Now, a lot of the asset defenses are assets themselves. Hostile infrastructure is an asset itself, which can be trashed with asset hate. Similarly, employee strike gets rid of IG pretty much permanently because you don't plan to score agendas. ELP, on the other hand, can be more permanent if you find the right deck to play it in. And this is why I'm going to try this. I'm going to play ELP in HB, and make it really annoying for runners to try to contest both my scoring remote, my centrals, and this allows me to play some of the new horizontal HB assets, which is clone suffrage movement and advanced assembly lines. Now I'm up against a perfect dummy test target, which is Dumble Fox Wizard. Okay, so here's how I begin the game. Ice on HQ for starters, followed by an end run on my remote. Yeah, pretty standard stuff. I do want to score the corporate sales team from my hand as soon as I can, but I have to see how my opponent plays out. A gamble outside is a very good start. It definitely makes me worried about trying to score and push out an agenda this early. I find myself a clone suffrage movement and an ELP. I think it's time to play the combo. So hopefully he will be baited into running the clone suffrage movement. Right now, the clone suffrage movement does nothing. For those of you who have forgotten, what it does is it allows you to recur an operation from archives to your hand at the start of each turn. Of your turn, sorry. Unfortunately, this doesn't really trigger because I have no operations in my archives yet. I would like to play the restructure from my hand so I can activate it. But now that he's played his imp, got down to 2 credits, with only 3 clicks, I think it's safe to try to bait him into running this remote. It's not a beta test, but he has to fear that it might be. So he does run my clone suffrage movement, costing him an extra click. That's where the tax starts. It is quite a bit of taxation, and he makes the most of it by then running my R&D and then trashing my assembly lines. So he spent his entire turn running. He spent all his wizard credits, didn't really accomplish much. That's good for me. In the meantime, I'm going to try to get my assembly lines going and then play a diversion and try to score my corporate sales team. I believe it's behind the Turing, so short of playing a David and then running to my server, he's not going to get the agenda, and he has to consider that there is a protective upgrade there. So he spends 2/3 of his turn dealing with my assembly lines, which I gain 2 credits from, and then he goes to trash whatever was on my R&D. Well, whatever the case is, it's not an agenda, so ELP stays in play, and I get my corporate sales team. So now the money will trickle, the money will flow, and he hasn't found his chronotype yet. So all these R&D runs are going to add up to a lot of lost clicks, but he finally finds the agenda he's looking for, and now ELP is trashed. Sad for me, but I do get my restructure at long last. Unfortunately, I'll need to find a way to get the clone suffrage movement going without him trashing it. That's a pretty tricky problem. With ELP, it's much easier to keep clone suffrage movement in play. Without ELP, it's much harder. Let's see what I can do about this. I have double Jackson, I have a Caprice which makes the scoring remote pretty secure, and he hasn't seemed to found his David yet. I will install a Jackson Howard here. At this point, I think I need more card draw and a bit more money. This is a very tricky juncture for me. I could do a lot of things. It's very tempting to install double draw with Jackson, but then there's the question, do you install the Jackson in the secure server or put it in the new remote? Or do I install the next silver on my remote? There are lots of things I could do. I decide to bait him into running my server, and then throw a diversion with the clone suffrage movement. We'll see what he runs here. He has to consider that there's a good possibility of me sneaking out an ABT at this point, being so rich and all. I still have half of my corporate sales team ready to take off. He does run through my Ichi safely with the Data Sucker and Mimic, so that installing the Mimic was a good call for both Architect and Ichi 1. He then runs my Suffrage Movement, trashing it for free. So most of my fun assets, the clone Suffrage Movements and Assembly Lines, are in the heap, sadly. However, this allows me to hyperdraw with Jackson. Here, I'm looking for an agenda. Any 3-2 agenda goes in the remote straight away. Can't find one. What do? Well, I guess it's time to patch up R&D. You have to be concerned that a fork is coming my way, so gotta make sure that that doesn't happen. And with Jackson safe, he can't run it, which means that I can continue hyperdrawing for my agenda, which I don't find once again. All I find is a lot of money and a lot of ice. So I guess I can start patching up my remote with some more secure ice. Turing or next ice, or the Architect, all of which are very annoying. I'm going to shuffle in my fun cards here, the Clone Suffrage movements, in hopes that an ELP will finally appear, and I try to bait him into running this remote one more time by installing the Caprice there. So if he doesn't run it, it means that I have a secure remote to score my next agenda. If he does run it, he seems to be doing so, installing the files. There's a very good chance he's running it. Well, he'll have to play side games and everything. He runs my archives for the sucker token, and that should be about it. Nope, he goes for HQ. Nothing of much value in HQ except for the Jackson, 1 in 5. I'm willing to take the risk. I'll let him in for 1 sucker token. I'm not really keen on rezzing the Wall of Static at this point. I could res it later. I'll keep it a secret for now. I find the ABT, so I'm going to install it there. It's very tempting at this point to advance the ABT, so that I can trigger the ABT and then install Jackson on next turn. However, I don't really want to give this away, so instead I'm going to just fortify the remote to give him no chance. He won't even think twice about running my remote. Well, he does, but after seeing the Turing, he has to jack out at this point. So that's good. I'm going to get the ABT off. Do I try to score it right now? It is very clear at this point by placing the Parasite on the Turing that he has no solution for my Turings. His Davids haven't arrived. This is probably a good time to fortify my remote. Reason being, he has a lot of sucker tokens. He's going to kill the Turing next turn if I score the ABT, which I don't really want. So what I do here is to block off the Turing with a next silver. So if he wants to try to destroy the Turing, he has to pay lots of tax to Faust. And then I rest the Wall of Static here to tax his runs further. Remove as many cards as possible from his hand. Now I rest the next silver here. That will cost him another card if he really wants to kill my Turing right now. He does. He ditches an Employee Strike. Coming into my Turing, I have no Cyberdexes, so he gets the Turing. Question is, will he continue on this run? He does. So I res next silver, the next silver. They both have 2 subroutines. He jacks out. Very good. He finally finds his chronotype, and I find my beta test. Let's score it. Trigger. I see an Ichi 1.0. That straight away goes on my remote. That saves me 3 credits of install cost. Yep. So that makes the remote almost impenetrable. You have to be concerned that he will use Clone Chip Parasite on one of my next silvers next turn, and could potentially challenge my Caprice Ash remote. At this point, I'm looking for the final copy of Global Food in my deck. Scoring it will win me the game. I need to do this as quickly as possible before he actually finds his David. Without David, he cannot contest my final ice, the Turing on my remote. Unfortunately, finding that Global Food is going to be tricky business. Thankfully, I have a Jackson Howard to help me do that, and we'll see whether that comes into play this turn. He's also not that rich, so I should be able to keep him out with the combination of Ash and Caprice. I'm starting to lose some money. With the corporate sales team dried up, I make a mistake here. I'm fooled into thinking that R&D needs to be defended. There's no medium on the board. And Ichi is really taxing. What I should have done was to not ice up R&D. Instead, I should be hyperdrawing with Jackson for my Global Food. So, well, knock knock. It's Global Food Initiative. He has come right to my door. Handed to me on a silver platter. I'm gonna take that. So the routine is simple, install double advance. I'm just looking through my archives now to see what I'm gonna shuffle in with Jackson Howard to lower agenda density in R&D. I pick one of each operation and an advanced assembly line. So this is for game. At this point, I don't have to worry about R&D at all. Admittedly, I got very lucky with the draw. But now this is almost certainly game wrapped up. However, he has found his David. That might be trouble. So he gets through the Ichi with Mimic and breaks my silver, which is only 1 and the run subroutine. I'm going to play the side game straight away because there's no point resing the Turing against the David. So, side game, I bid 2 here. That's a mistake. I think I should bid less. But as long as I can keep him out of this run, I should have the game wrapped up. He's very poor right now. He can bid all 3 numbers, but if he bids 2, which he does here, he's pretty broke. The Ash will keep him out for real. He can trash the Ash though, which is always a pain. That wizard credit is really coming to play. And so he comes in to challenge my remote one last time. After hitting the Liberator accounts, he has no more clicks left. So click compression, pretty good. I stole 1 click from him because he was forced to install the David, meaning that he only had 3 clicks to play with my remote, minus 1 click from clicking the Liberator, and realistically he had only had two chances at my remote. He won 1 side game, forcing the Ash. Now I just need to keep him away using this side game and I'll win the game. If I do not manage to keep him out with this side game, however, I think I lose. Short of never advanced shenanigans, I'm going to be in a horrible position with so few credits and my entire remote server wrecked. So, he allows me to fire the EG trace because he wasn't able to break it with Mimic, and this poses an interesting conundrum. I'm 1 credit short of forcing him into taking 1 brain damage, which means that he cannot use Faust to break silver. Unfortunately, since I'm 1 credit short, we have to play the side game. 1 in 3 chance of me completely blowing out this game. What will it be? I bid 2 again, and he bids, and he bids, and he bids a 0. So I keep the food safe, and I win in traditional food court style with Caprice support. So as you probably noted, the main difference between traditional food codes and my version is the economy package. Instead of the campaigns with Breakaway Grid, I forego that for much faster economy. After all, this is all about the rush, and the ice suite is also another big difference. Instead of usual ice, I don't have that much influence for Eli's and like. Instead, the next suite carries me forward. Of course, it's not very good against Parasite, and it showed quite clearly in this game. However, it still did its job. It made the remote rather unappealing, and it forced the Parasites, which gave me more time to score my agenda. Adonis is too slow. It's a bit hard to fathom that, but in today's meta, where Wildside ticks so quickly and Faust gets out of control so insanely fast, Adonis just doesn't cut it, because the remote is often occupied by agendas, by fake agendas like Jackson Howard, so you don't really want an Adonis sitting in the remote. Every turn a res Adonis is sitting in the remote, that's 1 turn where the runner can say, I'm not gonna run, I'm just gonna set up, I'm gonna get my wild cakes, I'm gonna get my money, and I'm gonna medium dig you by the time your Adonis ticks away. That can't be the case. You need to keep applying pressure by constantly playing the never advanced game. With 6 3-2 agendas in faction, they have to respect that every face down card can be a beta test. Also, not to mention that Adonis is very vulnerable to asset hate, which is why I don't play even Naked in conjunction with ELP. The fact that it's only trash for 3 is quite a big problem. If you want something that, with a lot of people trashing assets so easily now, you might as well go all out with advanced assembly lines and clone suffrage movement, which are cheaper to trash. It sounds a bit weird, but well, hear me out. Assembly lines is quite insane because it works very well with ETF, whether you have ELP up or not. With ELP, you don't use the trash ability unless they don't run it. At that point, it becomes a card which taxes the runner for 2 clicks, and you gain money out of it. Adonis can't really do that. Adonis makes you lose money if you res it, and if you don't res it, you're not gaining money. But assembly lines always pushes you ahead no matter what happens. Without ELP, and the best thing is, if the runner doesn't check it with ELP or without ELP, and it lasts until the end of the turn, you can fire advanced assembly lines after the runner takes the last click to install clone suffrage movement and then get 1 tick of clone suffrage movement. So for that, you get 3 credits of advanced assembly lines. Then, with clone suffrage movement, you gain about 3 or 4 credits by recurring a hedge fund or restructure back to your hand. That's what's amazing about this combo. Of course, I didn't get to pull off this game because my opponent kept on top of my assets. Not to mention that ELP was eroded pretty quickly, which meant that clone suffrage movement was rather lackluster. After the ELP went away, clone suffrage was quite easy for the runner to trash, and it becomes a liability on R&D. In that sense, launch campaign might be better because it's a card that can be tossed into a remote as never advance bait, something that you can't do with clone suffrage movement. You always have to install clone suffrage in a naked server. And launch campaign can be overwritten anytime and you'll still gain a profit out of it, unlike with Adonis. So yep, that's all. I will continue practicing this deck because it seems like it has some legs against the slower runners. Thanks for watching, happy net running, goodbye.